Kid Thunder is back. Welcome to part 3 of my rant on the video game industry. If you haven't seen parts 1 or 2, please stop watching this and do so. Now here we are in the PSX, N64, Saturn, and Dreamcast days. Now Saturn, as we all know in America, it sold terribly, obviously due to marketing reasons that Sega did, number 1. And number 2, another reason why the Saturn was a flop, because Bernie Stoller, who claimed that RPGs wouldn't sell well in America, and that was but when Final Fantasy VII moved to the PSX, it sold well a lot. But anyways, that's another story. However, here comes the PSX, which also came out during the time of the Saturn and N64 days. But the PSX was originally going to be an add-on for the Super Nintendo. However, the deal with Nintendo and Sony dropped because, if anything, I would say that Sony would get most of the profit share than Nintendo if that came to be anyways. So here we have is the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube, which was like the previous gaming generation before this one. Now, this was where like the whole classic gaming scene, didn't pretty much like got killed off at. This was where the gaming scene started to get worse, in my opinion. Mainly because, come to think of it, many people favored the PS2 and the Xbox because of how graphically superior it was to the GameCube, but that does not go there. Come to think of it, in my opinion, GameCube had a lot of good games on there. I never had an opportunity to play all the games on the GameCube, but I've played a few. I didn't just play only Smash Bros. Melee or Sonic Adventure 2, but I've played Resident Evil on there, and yeah, it's pretty good. But I know there are more games on the GameCube that are pretty good and whatnot. Now, come to think of it, in this era of PS2, Xbox, and GameCube, this was where the whole video game fanboyism started to get worse. And come to think of it, this was where I wouldn't call this much of a console war, in terms of a debate, in terms of which one is better. I would call this, like, as a lame excuse, I would call this current generation of console wars that this is just a rather pure excuse that the gaming community is just so bad that it should never exist at all. Classic gaming should still be in existence today. Now, I don't blame you. True, the classic gaming area is no longer in existence. That I need to start focusing on, what's current and not what's in the past and whatnot. But I don't know about you. That's your opinion. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions. But here's the thing. Don't get me wrong, because I like just about almost every video game console that ever came in existence. But come to think of it, I'm not going to be the one that's going to collect them all or play them all. I mean, yeah, I have gaming preferences too, but I'm not going to be all out just saying like which game console is better, because in conclusion, you have to take into consideration that every video game console that ever came to be has its strengths and weaknesses, has its ups and downs. Overall, this whole video game console war thing is just a bunch of bullshit, for one thing. The whole thing about Genesis does and blast processing is a bunch of bullshit. The whole thing about better graphics, better equals better games, bullshit. That's all I have to say about that. But let me continue on. I don't know about you, but I like all video game consoles like I just said. I mean, no video game console is better than another. I don't care what you say, but this is coming from a hardcore fact. And for those who like to say a game is good because of its graphics, you'll be sorry at the end, because for those who say that a good game equals good graphics, no. You know, you got to take a look at everything else, like the story, like the play control, hell, even the gameplay or the presentation. And that brings up to my next fact too. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't like all these mainstream video game reviewers out there too, for the most part, that thinks that, you know, a game is only good with one thing. Sure, like, I like first person shooters, don't get me wrong, but come to think of it, I really hate to state the fact that when it comes to a certain game that comes out, I really hate to see that. I mean, say for instance like a sports game, say like the Madden series or some shit like that. You know, don't you hate it when, you know, each and every year they obviously get an automatic 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10? Same goes with Grand Theft Auto and other video game franchises as well too, which also gets that same rating. Don't you hate that? I do. Another thing I seem to hate about this current generation of gaming is the fact that everybody, like each game company, Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, is basically copying each other. And the real reason why they're doing that is obviously because of, like I said in, I believe it was like part 1 of this rant, that I said that it's all about one major thing: corporate greed. I don't know about you, but it feels like every single game company nowadays is just, you know, copying each other. You know, the Nintendo Wii was obviously such a revolutionary controller. Recently, from what I've heard, is that, you know, Sony has this little thing called the PlayStation Move, and it's a direct copy of the Wii remote. Another thing about why I say that the video game industry spark is dead right now is primarily because, unlike in the olden days, you know, the video game industry has lost a lot of good key franchises. I mean, sure, if you take a look at on the PlayStation side, you know, Twisted Metal. What the hell happened to Twisted Metal 6, Sony? And if you take a look at Nintendo's side, we haven't seen an F-Zero game ever since the days of the Game Boy Advance. We haven't seen another Star Fox game on the Wii platform either. And so, to conclude this rant, and the question I gotta say is, are we living in a dull era of gaming? In my opinion, I do. Because gaming nowadays has gone dull. Has gone from goodness to absolute shit, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not saying that the new game consoles suck. I like the PS3, I like the 360, I like the Wii, but sadly, I don't think the spark is there anymore. As of now, this concludes this long-awaited rant of the video game industry. Kid Thunder signing off. Take care. Leave comments. Subscribe. Do whatever you want.